All right. Already, Bill, you're my type of guy. You could talk forever. It seems like, you're one of you're one of those
That's
good
I don't
attorneys.
know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but yeah. So but I get paid to do it. So it's kind of works.
Look, Bill Marler is here. And I found out about him from the terrific documentary that everybody should watch on Netflix called Poison, The Dirty Truth About Our Food. You've dedicated your career. I think your career is so fascinating to food liability and essentially making our food safer, which means over the years, you became very famous in the 90s for the Jack in a Box E. coli hamburger outbreak that how many people 700 people were impacted. What was it? 4 children died. It was like the saddest story. And it
Yeah.
yeah, that was kind of what put you on the map, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
pointed you in the
Absolutely.
direction.
Yeah. And not only did 700 people get sick and 4 kids died,
Oh,
but there were about 75 people that suffered from acute kidney failure. Which is known as hemolytic uremic syndrome, or HUS, but it's the bad outcome for this kind of Shiga toxin, E. coli. When it gets into your bloodstream, that toxin is released. It splits your red blood cells and clogs up your capillaries in your system, your brain, your liver, and of course your kidneys, and causes kidney failure. And most of these children, after being on dialysis for a period of time, survived, but they were all left with some long-term complications, which some of the kids went on to need a kidney transplant. So yeah, it's a long-term problem.
The whole documentary is based on the safety of our food, and it's terrifying to watch. You're in the business, so I don't even know how you eat any food. I would try to live off air. But I'm so fascinated because now I'm a new mom. And it's like, God, we take our kids to like Burger King or McDonald's or things like this, and you don't even think about, could that chicken nugget that my child is having cause like kidney
Yeah,
failure?
right.
It's crazy. So talk to me about, I guess really where to even start, because it's just so interesting. But I watched the documentary and then I said to myself, are we even safer with our food? Like, the work you did with Jack in the Box changed food safety because
Right.
essentially it forced all these fast food chains, because this was a major lawsuit and settlement, to have a regulation, right? That they were going to
Right.
cook hamburgers at a certain temperature so it kills the E. coli bacteria, right? You were the spearhead to make that happen.
Yeah. And the other thing that happened it's actually, a bit more fail safe, was that the government deemed this type of E. coli to be an adulterant. So it was illegal to sell it with it. Before the Jack in the Box case, you knowingly could sell E. coli contaminated hamburger and get away with it. After Jack in the Box, not so much. And one of the things I say in the movie is, and it's completely true, is that really during the 90s, 90%, 95% of my law firm revenue was E. coli cases linked to hamburger. Today, that's zero. That doesn't mean to go out and eat raw hamburger, but what it does tell you is that, it's not all gloom and doom. I mean, we can do things. I mean, government regulation works. Being attentive to the safety of your consumers can work. And so where, I wouldn't let my kids eat a hamburger growing up,
I saw that.
you know, I would eat a hamburger myself today. And I think that just underscores the fact that even though some of these problems seem kind of intractable, they're just like, oh my God, how do you deal with this? If you just put one foot in front of the other, people can do stuff, but consumers need to get, kind of off the sidelines and put a lot more pressure on industry and the government to do the right thing.
Okay, is that true? Because, it's interesting. I watched the documentary and I was a little discouraged. I mean, is the
Mhm.
FDA and USDA, I mean, it actually seems like they do less today than they did in the 90s. Like they seemed actually more helpful to you with the Jack in the Box case,
Yeah.
because you really focus on chicken and salmonella
Right.
in the documentary.
Yeah.
And like, it kind of seems like they don't really want to do shit to really regulate. I mean, right?
Well said. Well said. Well said. You know, the problem in the food space is that unless something really horrible is happening, people don't pay attention. If you're, not taking hundreds of millions of dollars from these companies, they ignore you. And, and that's sort of the reason why, like, a lot of these problems, and I'm glad I really was glad that they highlighted, the chicken salmonella problem and also the lettuce E. coli problem that's still happening.
Oh, yeah,
Those are the two things I'm really glad they focused on, partly because to me, I look at those things and those are fixable. You can fix those things. And the problem is getting government and industry to react before some major disaster forces them to do it. And that's really where, I'm not blaming consumers, because it's not like we don't have a lot of other stuff to do day to day, but we really do need, and I hope it's a wake-up call for consumers to pick up their phone and call their Congress member and go, what do you mean it's completely legal to sell salmonella tainted chicken? What do you mean it's okay for lettuce growers to grow, lettuce within a stone's throw of a cattle feedlot? Why is that okay? And I think those are the kinds of things that I think we need consumers to talk about.
Okay, so that's what we can do. So people listening to this, because I'm one of the, like, I never cared till I have a child, right? And like,
Right.
it just broke my heart. I'm like, oh my God, to see these babies, like in the documentary, that little boy who died, it's like, oh my God, and I mean, my son, the little nanny that he has, she loves to take him to IHOP or wherever. And now I'm thinking like, oh my God, you're never eating at IHOP again. I mean, not that they have an outbreak, but it's
no.
What can we do? You're saying calling your representative, is that like the best thing?
I mean, there's a lot that consumers can do, but on the big sort of issues of the day that I think are important. I mean, think about it this way. 1.3 million Americans get salmonella every year, and about 60% of that is caused by chicken. And so why is that acceptable? It shouldn't be. If you go, your grocery store, the people that sell chicken can knowingly sell contaminated chicken to you, knowing that it has salmonella in it, and they know that it's quite okay because the government doesn't ban it, but they ban E. coli from hamburger. Now, I'm a lawyer. I try to make things make sense. You tell me why it's against the law to sell E. coli contaminated hamburger, but it's completely legal to sell salmonella tainted chicken. It makes no sense. And it kills and sickens, hundreds of thousands of people a year in the United States. It's nuts.
Okay, here's a dumb question for you, because I was thinking about this when I watched the documentary. So with salmonella, is the idea an E. coli, if you cook it to a high enough temperature long enough, you kill the bacteria?
Absolutely.
Okay, so if I never really thought about this, but if I cook chicken breast, which I cook all my meat until it's like rubber, it's not, no one in my family enjoys it, but we eat it for the protein, because I'm just terrified of that. So, okay, if you do buy a piece of chicken and you see it, you don't know if it's contaminated, because does salmonella smell? Like, is there an off? Okay, so you can't smell it.
You can't see it, taste it, smell it.
Okay, so as long as you cook it off, then, and you've kind of wiped up all your spaces with a disinfectant, killed all the bacteria, then potentially you could be fine.
Absolutely. But, I think one of the best parts of the movie to me was that sort of reenactment in the kitchen with the mom and the kid, and how easy it is to cross-contaminate things. And that to me is, I kind of, consumers, we need to be responsible for what we can be responsible for. But look how difficult that was. And look, even the scientists saying how difficult it was.